Where the Mind is Without Fear by Rabindranath Tagore. Before I begin to explain you this poem, I think it would be important if I explain you the background of this poem. Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore wrote the poem Where the Mind is Without Fear when India was still under the British rule. The Britishers ruled India with the single motive of robbing the nation of all her resources, and they left no stone unturned to achieve their objective. Hence they resorted to heinous and cruel methods to crush each and every obstacle that came into their path. Unfortunately, the obstacles were none other than human life. And while they did this, they made sure to instill fear in the minds of common men so that none should dare to take a stand against the immoral and unjust rule of the British. You see, they did this to Indians for around 200 years. When a nation is crushed like this for 2 centuries, the emotional consequences are unavoidable. And one such consequence is fear. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Rabindranath Tagore prays to God for a nation where the mind is fearless. He knows that no development is possible if there is fear in mind. No revolution is possible if there is fear in the mind. How can a fearful mind take a stand against the mighty power of the British? And the head is held high. When the poet wrote these lines, you will see a lot of importance has been given to keeping the head in a high position, and the head is held high. When a nation is subjugated and tortured for decades, its subjects are demoralized and they live in a constant state of fear. Holding one's head high becomes unthinkable. It takes courage to raise your voice against injustice. It takes fearlessness to raise your head against a tyrant who is constantly trying to crush you. The poet prays for a fearless mind because you cannot hold your head high as long as there is fear in your mind. It takes courage to raise your voice against injustice. It takes fearlessness to raise your head against a tyrant who is constantly trying to crush you. So the poet prays for a nation where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free. You see, the poem was written during a period when the Britishers were not the only problem India had to face. There were other problems as well. Some of these problems were casteism, superstition, poverty, communalism, and regionalism. The poet prayed for a nation where knowledge would be free. It means each and every individual should get equal opportunity to gain knowledge irrespective of their caste, religion, and economic status. However, this was not the case in the pre-independent era. The so-called lower caste people were not allowed education and poor were unable to afford it. Hence, equal opportunity to gain knowledge was not available. Hence, the poet prays for a nation where knowledge would be. But the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Here, each and every word has a meaning. Here the world is India. Fragments means broken nation, and narrow domestic walls are casteism, superstition, communalism, and regionalism. You cannot fight a mighty empire if there is division within your own people. The poet has wisely chosen the word narrow in the phrase narrow domestic walls. Here narrow means negative. Domestic means the sources within the nation. Walls means boundaries, differences. The poet says that the people themselves have built these walls, and these walls are sabotaging the unity of the nation. A nation can never stand united if its subjects do not feel related to each other. The people of India had self-imposed the narrow walls of casteism, communalism, and regionalism upon themselves, and prophetically you would notice that India gained her independence only when people from various castes, religion, and communities got together and fought the common enemy. Rabindranath Tagore was a visionary. He could see that India could never reach her glory in the presence of these domestic walls. Hence he prayed to God for a nation that would be free from the evils of casteism, communalism, regionalism, and superstition, where words come out from the depth of truth. It is easier to speak the truth where there are no consequences. However, imagine a situation where you could be punished for speaking the truth. Would you still speak the truth? Yes, you would, if you have a fearless. The poem was written during the period of British tyranny, and the revolution started when the people of India gathered the courage to speak the truth at the face of the Britishers. It takes courage to speak the truth when the consequences are unfavorable. Hence the poet prays for a nation where the words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. The poet mentions here very clearly that perfection can only be attained by unceasing effort. One has to keep on working tirelessly until they reach perfection. Perfection doesn't come by talent. Talent can surely give you a head start, but perfection comes only to the unrelenting pursuer. If you want to attain perfection at anything, you will have to strive for it tirelessly. The poet prays for a nation where citizens are hardworking, people who will never give up their pursuit of perfection, because only then can a nation become great. Where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. Here, clear stream of reason means rationality, and dreary means repetitive. So dreary sand means irrational customs that have been passed on to us from generations. They are repetitive and infertile like a desert sand. They lead us to nowhere. So where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, it means where a rational mind has not lost its way. The mind thinks rationally instead of thinking based on superstition, communalism, and other things. The mind thinks in a rational way. It is not bounded by the dead habits. Here the dead habit is habit that inhibits growth, superstition, etc. Here dead habit refers to old and harmful customs that inhibit the nation's growth. But the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. The poet prays for a nation where God himself leads the minds of the people. The poet prays to God to bless the citizens of the country with a progressive mind, a mind that is not sabotaged by narrow beliefs. He prays for a mind which gets widened by actionable experiments. He pleads for a mind that just doesn't take for granted superstitious beliefs, but tests every thought and through act. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. So why does the poet use the phrase heaven of freedom? True freedom comes when the mind is truly free. And a mind is truly free when it is free from all the limiting beliefs that are not based on nationality, beliefs that hinder the progress of humanity. According to the poet, when a mind frees itself from all the bondages, it experiences true freedom, and this freedom is like heaven, where you are free to pursue any of your ambitions. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. The poet prays to God to awaken the citizens of the nation. He wisely uses the word awaken because the citizens are currently sleeping. The minds are not yet free. They are still under the bondage of inhibiting beliefs and customs. He prays to God to wake them up so that they have a new mind, a mind that is without fear and limiting belief. So my dear friends, if you have any questions, you can type them in the comment section. And if you liked the video, you could give it a thumbs up. You could even subscribe to the channel if you want more such videos. Have a great day, guys. All the best.